So Anne, tell me all about Rosedale Funeral Home.
So, although I'm a fourth generation funeral director, and between us we've got more than 150 years of experience as funeral directors, as a company we're still very young, we're just into our 12th year. But we're a funeral home. We focus on the needs of bereaved families and help them to arrange a personal and meaningful funeral service for their loved ones.
And whereabouts are you based?
We're based in Norfolk and Suffolk. We've got a small team there, half one side of the border and half the other side of the border.
And so being a funeral director has obviously been in your family for quite a while, and I know your father had a business. Tell us what happened there and how you ended up starting Rosedale.
Yeah, my dad was a funeral director. And I kind of grew up with my dad being on call at the weekends, and memories of sitting down at Christmas dinner and the pager going off, and off he'd go. And when I left school, I joined the family business. But shortly afterwards, it got sold to a Canadian organisation, which was really great for me actually. And I had loads of opportunities and went out to Vancouver and spent some time there working. Really enjoyed their ownership. But then over the next couple of years, it changed hands a few more times and ended up in the hands of venture capitalists. And then it all became about the bottom line and profits rather than focusing on the needs of bereaved families. And that was when I decided that it wasn't for me anymore. My values were being compromised. And I decided to set up a funeral home with my husband, Simon, and here we are now.
So tell us about, working together with your husband, your different roles and how you're involved with the business and how you maintain that sort of working relationship.
Okay, we have really different skills because Simon had never worked in the funeral profession before, but he brings to the table his ability to develop a funeral home. He can take a derelict building and turn it into a wonderful, peaceful place for families to come. And he upholds our standards. And he's also an amazing master of ceremonies on the day. He looks really smart in his top hat and tails, walking out in front of the hearse. Whereas for me, I prefer to be more behind the scenes. So I look after the personnel and the finances and the marketing. But most of my fulfillment comes from sitting down with families and arranging funerals with them, and also developing the bereavement support and the aftercare. So we have really different roles, and actually, although we work and run the same business, we don't actually see each other much during the day at all. So it's all then sort of catch up over dinner in the evening.
And let's go back to you were talking about, values and how they were compromised when the other business got taken over. Mm-hmm. What are the core values of Rosedale, and how do you think that helps with the non-family members of the business?
Well, I think probably if I had to sum it up in a nutshell, and my staff say it to me on a fairly regular basis, families come first. And I think probably, that's really what we work towards. And I think if we stick with that, then we don't go far wrong. But, when I was being asked to tell staff that they needed to sell coffins and sell a certain quality of coffin, that to me that was just wrong. Arranging a funeral with the bereaved is not about selling anything. It's about listening and finding out what the person who died was like, finding out the dynamics of the family, and picking up all the clues that they give you, and then trying to create a service that's meaningful and personalised for them. It's not about selling them anything.
What did you sort of learn from the process of your father selling his business? Perhaps there are other family businesses out there who have been approached, who are maybe thinking that's the right option. What did you sort of learn and take from that?
The reason probably our family business got sold was succession planning. And obviously that's something that's really at the forefront of my mind. And, where will Rosedale go? What will the future be for Rosedale? And at the moment, our youngest child's only 9, so it's too early to say whether they're going to want to work in the family business or not. But we kind of have this idea that if it doesn't stay in the family, which, we accept that it may well not, although that would be our desire. But if it didn't stay in the family, then in some way we'd like to be able to pass it on to the staff and give it to the staff to run, rather than for what happened before to happen again. Because I've seen it so many times, it happens all the time. It's really sad.
And so running a business isn't plain sailing, as many entrepreneurs will know, let alone a family business. What have been your biggest challenges in the last 10, 12 years, and what do you foresee them being in the future?
Okay, well, I think probably our biggest challenge is that there's not enough of us to go around. if we could clone ourselves, then life would be easy. We are a small team and there's so much we want to do. We've got big dreams, and the trouble is I'm impatient and I want to do it all now, and I find it quite difficult to pace ourselves, and sometimes we put ourselves under too much pressure as a family. There's too much happening. Corporately, the biggest challenge for us is transparency of ownership, and a lot of family businesses have been sold to the big corporates, the cooperatives and companies on the stock market, but they don't change their name, they don't rebrand, so they still look, to all intents and purposes, like a family business, and that's a big challenge for us because we believe that we stand apart from them, but the trouble is people don't know that we're a family business and they're not, so that's a big challenge for us.
And are you affected by the state of the economy and the market? Does that affect your industry?
Yeah, the big challenge facing the profession at the moment is funeral poverty, and there's a lot of people out there that are not making provision for their funeral when they die, and that means that their loved ones are often going into debt to try and cover the cost of a funeral. But talking about death is a massive taboo, and that's a big challenge for us, to try and break down those taboos and encourage people to talk about death. Talking about death isn't going to make you die. No. All it's going to do is make sure that you've got your plans in place so that when you do die, you're not leaving a massive financial burden for your loved ones that you leave behind. There's so much work to do with funeral poverty, and we're working with the Quaker Social Fund. We've signed up to the Funeral Pledge. We're one of the first funeral directors in our area to do that. And that's a massive national campaign, to try and tackle funeral poverty. And then we also work with the Dying Awareness team to try and break down the taboos surrounding death. So those two things together, hopefully will start to make a difference. But, they're national campaigns and we're just a small family team. So, we do our bit, but we can't change the world.
And let's talk about people. So obviously you and Simon are at the helm of the business, fantastic team around you. Is it difficult in your profession to attract and retain really good staff?
It is really hard. 12 years down the line, 3 of our founding funeral directors are still with us. And, the success of the business is in no small way down to them too. So, I'd like to acknowledge Derek and Richard and George and Liz and, the people that were with us from the very early days. We are finding it really hard to attract and recruit new funeral directors. Sometimes we've taken someone on and they just haven't been someone that we feel is going to work to our values and our standards. And that's really hard to have to let somebody go. But it is really hard to find the right person. But we won't settle for second best. It's got to be the right person. I know they're out there. We just need them to come and find us.
And aside from running your business, I know something that gets you really excited is all the charity work and the community involvement you have at Rosedale. So tell us all about that.
Okay. Well, probably the charity that's closest to my heart is Nelson's Journey. And that's a child bereavement charity based in Norfolk. There's an obvious link there between a funeral home and child bereavement, and we've done a lot with them to provide training for schools teachers to make sure that children in schools get the support that they need. And as a result of that, I've been asked to be a trustee of the charity. I also volunteer for them. I fundraise. I go on the therapeutic weekends and support the children, and I go and give talks for them, trying to raise awareness of them. One of the really special things that we've done this year is my brother made a doll's house in the shape of a church. And it's really lovely, really special for me that my brother made it and we were able to present it to Nelson's Journey. And it's all kitted out inside with little pews and an organ and choir stalls and the minister and even like a little coffin on trestles inside. And the childhood bereavement support workers use it to explain to children what happens at a funeral, because we all know what happens at a funeral. They haven't ever been to one, so they don't know. And when someone says, do you want to go to Daddy's funeral? They don't actually know what they're being asked. So the bereavement support workers can talk to them and actually show them with the cars what happens at the funeral. And then they can decide if they want to be a part of that or not. So that's been a really lovely thing to do for Nelson's Journey. But as part of our 10th anniversary celebrations last year, we set ourselves a target to raise £10,000 for local charities. And I must admit, at the start, I thought that was a really big ask. But we got into the swing of things. We did loads of events. We did a dog show. We did a quiz night. We did, got my best friend to call bingo. And we ended up actually raising £17,000 and winning an award for it as well. So.
And that obviously had such an impact on your team, the community, your relationships with local people, as well as obviously being fantastic to raise £17,000 for charities. Great for team morale, team building.
Yeah, definitely. It's been really good for the team, but it's also been really good for what I was saying about breaking down taboos, because the members of the public are meeting the staff from the funeral home and they're seeing that we're just ordinary people who want to give something back to the community. And we would go to Fates and sell candy floss and popcorn to raise money for the local brownies. And while we're making candy floss, people are coming up to us and asking us about, maybe some of the myths surrounding funerals, or maybe asking, how much does a funeral cost? And I think people find it quite hard to actually come in through the doors of a funeral home. There's quite an invisible barrier there. But if they see you at a fete and you're not in your uniform, you're in your jeans and your Rosedale fleece, and you're approachable somehow, and they can ask you things that are worrying them, things that have been on their mind. Were they really my husband's ashes that I got back, or are they just a collection of everybody that have been cremated that day? And people worry about things like that, and it's really great for us to be out and about in the community, being approachable. People come and talk to us.
And do you think it helps that you are a family business? They can come and talk to you and Simon, and your name is above the door, rather than a co-op. Do you think that really helps?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the children were involved with all the fundraising. All 3 of our children were there. They came to every event. They're there at midnight, sweeping up the floors and emptying the bins. And, I think people see us as a family, and I think that's really important. And it's our family supporting their families. And I think, that makes a big difference. Because when somebody dies, you need someone that you can turn to, that you can trust, to get your support. And we're there for people 24/7. And I think knowing that it's a family supporting their family is massive for them.
So it sounds like you've had quite an incredible 12 years, topped off by your fundraising to celebrate your anniversary. What does the future hold for Rosedale? What plans have you got in the pipeline?
Okay, we're definitely not going to sit still. We don't want to grow in terms of the geographical areas that we cover, because I think we could spread ourselves too thin. But what we want to focus on is expanding the services that we provide for the bereaved. So we already run bereavement support groups and friendship groups. We'd like to expand those so that we have volunteers that go out and help them. We're providing the bereavement support, but they've got lots of practical needs. So if a lady's husband's died and the tyre pressures on her car need to be checked, she doesn't know how to do that. So we want to have a volunteer that we can send around that she can trust to do that. We want to launch a recipe book for cooking for one, because we have so many men come and their wives always cooked, and for them to go to the trouble to cook a meal for themselves and sit and eat it on their own, it's really hard. So that's definitely something that we want to work on. And this Christmas we're doing wreath making workshops for the bereavement groups as well. They can take a wreath to the grave that they've made themselves, which in itself will be really therapeutic. In terms of Nelson's journey, I've got big plans there. I'm trying to use my influence to encourage all the funeral directors in our area to work together to try and collectively raise money to fund another bereavement support worker. They've been so inundated. The death rate this year is up by 30%. And obviously for us, that's been a challenge in our business to cope, because we haven't been able to grow our team quickly enough. But for them, what it's meant is that they've actually had to introduce a waiting list for bereaved children. When an 11-year-old has lost their mum, they don't want to be put on a waiting list. They need help, and they need it now. And early intervention makes such a difference to how that child will cope on their grief journey. So collectively to fundraise for a bereavement support worker. And we've also been really inspired by you and your mum at Family Business Place. And next year, we'd like to commission a Rosedale well in Uganda. So in terms of fundraising, that's our next big goal.
Wow, very exciting times coming up. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a dull moment at Rosedale.
No, definitely not.
It's challenging working in a family business, running a business, managing family relationships and keeping those together. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe not worked in a family business before and is thinking about joining a family firm? What things would you say, just watch out for these things, or just consider these things?
Okay. Well, firstly, I would say if you're looking for an easy ride, then don't do it. If you want to be 9 to 5 and you want to take life easy, then I'd say probably look somewhere else. because in my experience of family businesses is that the staff are dedicated and hardworking, they stay till the work's done, and they have a really strong work ethic. But then I think in return for that, I think there's amazing opportunities that are open to you, lots of things that maybe you wouldn't ever do before. I think family businesses can be quite reactive. I think, they're open to new challenges, and I think, amazing potential for people.
And I'm going to put you on the spot now. What would you say is your secret to running a successful family business?
I think it's about doing the right thing and putting our families first. And that's all we've ever really done. And we were successful from day one. When we started 12 years ago, overnight, 60% of the funerals in our area came to us. And they did that because of the goodwill that was attached to the staff that work for us, because they've done good funerals for the families before, because we've looked after the families. They know that we're honest, they know that we care. And that's what they want. They want someone that they can trust. And I think as long as we still get that right, everything else just seems to follow on.